Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Instructional Story Design Roundtable. My name is Rance Green, and I am the author of this book right here, Instructional Story Design. Many of you have already read the book. Some of you are brand new to instructional design. And I am so thrilled to have two very special guests with us today, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But first, a word from the School of Story Design. I'm going to share a very brief video about what the School of Story Design is all about. This is on the School of Story Design's homepage. Hello, instructional designers! You have probably heard many times that stories are great for training. They provide context, engagement, emotional input, action. Yes, stories do all of these things, but we're still left with a big question. How do you write a story for training? How do you produce the story once it's written? How do you train with a story? How do you get buy-in for storytelling? Okay, maybe several big questions. My name's Rance Green, the author of this book and the founder of the School of Story Design, where we focus exclusively on you, instructional designers. At the school, you'll find two certification tracks. The Instructional Story Design track is the heartbeat of our school. It's the methodical process of instructional design with story right in the middle. Everything you need to know to write a story and train with it. Our other track is Beyond Story Production. Beyond's all-in-one video creation tool has amazing capabilities to bring your story to life. The skills of visual thinking, storyboarding, and animated video production will prepare you to produce any type of video. Story-based videos? Yep. Process videos? Yep. Explainer videos? Yes. Can my whole team sign up? Are there group discounts? Do we get to practice with feedback? Yes, yes, and yes. All of our courses are designed to give you practice with feedback. So, are you ready to write, produce, and train with a story? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Count me in. Oh, yeah. All right, let's take your training to the next level. The story level? You got it. Welcome to the School of Story Design. All right, so thank you, School of Story Design. Stacy, thank you so much. I'm glad you are enjoying the book. Um, I'd like to make two introductions. So first, I'm going to introduce to you two very good friends of mine, both of whom have gone through the Instructional Story Design Certification Program. And the first person is Marnie Levitt. Hello, Marnie.
Hello.
Marnie is not joining us from Maryland. She is
No.
joining us from Rhode Island. And another friend of mine who has also gone through the Instructional Story Design Certification Program, Teresa Moreno from Zurich.
Hi, everyone.
Well, I'm so thrilled to have both of them join the roundtable today. They have both produced some amazing examples of story design courses. I'm going to do a little bit of an interview style with them today about their experience with the certification. We're also going to see examples of their work during this session and talk about what stories that spark a desire for resolution and why that's important. Before we do that, Marnie, how has the instructional story design certification changed the way that you approach instructional design?
I think the biggest thing that has done, I can't think of any other way to work now. It's stuck in my brain. Instructional story design is just there. I believe that there's a story in everything that can be told to enhance what someone learns. Even the most boring topics, as you'll see in my example, whether a story is really specific to a concept or an overall story that takes place throughout the training from beginning to end, there's always something somewhere. And it's so much fun. I feel like a detective to I get to uncover and develop the story as I'm designing and developing my projects. So I don't think
Yeah.
any other way at this point after taking the certification and getting to the and finishing the certification.
One of the things that I loved about your write-up at the end of the certification process was I can find a story anywhere, even in compliance training.
Hmm.
Um, yes, there is a story there. There's just one waiting to be unearthed.
Right.
Thank you, Marnie.
Hmm.
Teresa, I'll ask you the same thing. How has instructional story design certification changed the way that you approach instructional design?
I think I've become more intentional about the message I want to deliver and how. And it really has helped me to keep focus on the why, but also on the why, what for? Like, okay, what for? Why am I doing now this? Why, what do I want to share and deliver? And what do I want people to do with that? So that
Mhm.
is, I think for me, I think I also shared it in the write-up. It's like being intentional is like the key word, like
Yes.
intention behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, the intention behind it. Yeah, I love that. And stories have a wonderful way of forcing us to be very concrete. So we can't get away really with kind of um, a simple like awareness campaign, right? We have to get very concrete. What are we training people to do? I love that. Um, for those of you who are brand new to instructional story design, I'd like to share with you the heart of the book. And then we're going to look at some of Marnie and Teresa's examples. The heart of the book is the instructional story design model. And if you want to jot down, you can put story at the top of your page and action at the bottom of your page. And what we need to do is make sure that this story is concretely connected to the action that we want people to take as a result of training. We can't have some fluffy story that isn't going to have an impact or some story that's going to be irrelevant to the training. It has to be directly related to the action that we're training people to do. So when you think about stories and the stories that you read or that you write or that you tell or that you watch, what are the elements of a story that make it a story? And you can unmute yourself and talk. You can put your answer in the chat. What makes a story a story?
So hey, Rand, so I always think of like the hero's journey, right? You got your three acts. You've got, the challenge, the thing that gets the hero out of his comfort zone. Then he goes on an adventure, and then he solves a problem, and he's been transformed.
Beautiful. Yeah. So you've got and yes, Angie, conflict problems. So they have that challenge. Another word for that, Angie, conflict, problem. You have characters, that hero, that main person there. Good. Ramya says, adding that pinch of emotional ingredient. That was very poetic, Ramya. Yes, stories are inherently emotional because they contain some very important ingredients, as have already been pointed out. So Valerie says, transformed at the end of the story, a journey. Yes, good. Yes, a lot of stories contain transformation. In fact, if they don't, is it a story? So the two elements that I want to focus on that are necessary in any training story are these two things: relatable characters and strong conflict. Relatable characters and strong conflict. And the reason I use the word relatable is because our learning audience has to have empathy for these characters. And the reason I use the word strong conflict is because we must have conflict. I want to remind us all we have to have it. We have to have the conflict to have a story, and it needs to be as strong as possible. Relatable characters and strong conflict. And there's something that happens inside of us when we see relatable characters, characters that we care about, in conflict. It produces something in us. What would you call that feeling that you have when you see characters in conflict? You can unmute yourself or type your answer in the chat. So Angie says concern, anxiety. Yes. Empathy.
Curiosity.
What'd you say, Teresa?
Curiosity. You're curious. You're expecting something to develop.
Yeah. Curiosity. Yeah. You're like, hey, what are they going to do now? Good. Stacy resonates. Lisa, as if empathy. Yes, because they are relatable characters, you have empathy for them. And because they're in a situation that also resonates with you, you have empathy for them. And so what I call that is a desire for resolution. When you put relatable characters into strong conflict, it sparks a desire for resolution. And really, once the story in your training has sparked a desire for resolution, the story has done its job. It's done its work. But we still haven't concretely connected to the action that we want people to take here. So we've got to fill that in. And of course, that is filled in with instruction. In a very specific way of instructing, using everything that we've done to create this story to train our learning audience based on the story. Now, our focus in this model today is this middle part here, this desire for resolution. Where does this desire for resolution come from? How do we produce this desire for resolution? Well, the answer, of course, is right above. It's how relatable are our characters? And how strong is that conflict? And where do we get these two things? How do we create a relatable character, right? We can't create it from nothing. It's got to come from somewhere. And so for every new learning audience that I am training, or for that matter, for every audience that I am consulting or I am going to speak to, I will create an audience profile. And I want to know things about that audience, like what are their values? What are their fears? What are their current circumstances at work? How are they reacting to those current circumstances? Because when a learning audience comes into a training experience, they're not just coming in as a brain. They're coming in with as a whole person. And I want to know as much as I can about that learning audience so that I can create from that profile characters that they will be like, yeah, I know that character, or I've been in that situation myself, or that character looks a lot like me. That's the kind of response I want for my characters in my story from my learning audience. And where does this strong conflict come from? The strong conflict comes from the action list. Now, you may call this learning objectives, you may call it a task list. I call it an action list. My team calls it an action list, and I train all of my stakeholders, all of my clients to call it an action list because I want everybody in the room to have in the forefront of their mind that we are training people to do things. And so, very simply, it is a list of actions that I'm training people to do, a list of skills that I'm training people to do. And when I have a strong and verified action list, then I have something I can put my characters in conflict with. And voila, a story is created that is tailor-made for that training experience. Relatable characters from my audience profile and strong conflict from my action list. And we're going to talk about both of those things today. And we're going to start by actually talking about the action list first. Um, Marnie, you created a course for the certification program that was for compliance. I'd like to tell us a little snippet of what that course is about, but many people view compliance training as boring click-through training. So how did you drill down to observable actions on your action list?
Um, very carefully. My topic was about data privacy, which is typically a check the box, be aware kind of training where you have the list of corporate data privacy rules that are narrated to you, or you read them and then you click to go to the next slide, and guess what? You forget what you just learned. It's sometimes hard to put these rules and guidelines into action. So one thing that I did is I chose a specific rule to bring to life in the story, and it took a bit of time to land on it. But after speaking with the global privacy officer at my company, who was also the subject matter expert that I was working with, the observable action that I chose was protecting the data that's gathered while we are working on client projects. So there's an action right there. It's not just, you must protect the data. It's, how do we protect the data? This is something that's not always covered or covered in much detail when it came to our privacy rules. So from that point, I mapped out the steps that someone might take to correctly handle the sensitive data. And it ended up loosely looking something like this. Step one was to analyze the data, basically to figure out if it's internal company data or data for a client project. And step two was to take the action on that data once you know what it is. What do you do with it? And the results were that you should be following the internal privacy guidelines, and if it's client data, refer to the client data agreement with the project. Once I knew those correct actions, then I mapped out the opposite or the incorrect actions, meaning what people shouldn't do with the client project data, which eventually turned into the strong conflict of my story. I paired that with my characters, which were a lot of fun to develop because I could pick characteristics from people that I know and mash them all together. And then finally, once I met and created Mark and Ingrid, a story started to take shape.
So let's view that story. And just before we get into that story, I love that you identified that main action first. You broke that main action down into sub actions and maybe even into sub actions after that. So beautifully done. You can tell just from her listing those actions, I could watch somebody do those things. So now let's watch her story in action. And as you're watching it, I want you to pay attention to how do I feel during this story? And by the end of the story, how do I feel? And let's talk, when we come back, let's talk about how you're feeling. All right, here is Marnie's story.
Ingrid, it's been a while since you've been in the office.
Huh. Once in a while, they let me leave the project site. I just got an email from Bridge Builders Incorporated, and they want some footage from the surveillance cameras from the new bridge project. They just need a 30-second clip.
Sure. What's it for?
They have a presentation at City Hall, and they want to put it on their website with their next project update.
Okay. Let's see. We have a few different camera views. Which one do you think would work?
What about that one? So you can see the traffic.
Yeah, you can see a lot of detail, even license plates. I wonder if that's too much detail.
I think it's perfect. Let's use that one.
Okay. I'll send it right over.
All right, so at the end of that story or during that story, how did you feel? And why did you feel that way? You're welcome to unmute or type your answer in the chat.
I was thinking I needed to talk to somebody in legal. Like, I don't know about this.
Good, good. So you weren't sure about it. Maybe I need to contact somebody. That's good,
Yeah,
Connie. I mean, Angie, that's great. Connie says, interested because the woman felt relatable. Nice. Stressed because he knew it wasn't right to provide that information, but he did it anyway. That's the fun part about this particular story is that it's not necessarily wrong to provide this information depending on what you discover. And so I encourage you guys to actually take this course, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute because it's not as straightforward as it seems. But you're feeling stressed, interested, thinking through what would I do in this situation? Because why do you think that is? Is because she created exactly, you could relate. You could relate to the character, Teresa, and you could feel the tension of the conflict because every action that was taking place in this story was paired with one of the actions on the action list, and they were conflicting actions. And so now that that desire for resolution has been sparked, boom, where do we go to next? We go to, so she has these relatable characters in strong conflict. It's given us this desire for resolution, and now she launches into the instruction. And the instruction may surprise you because it's not um, tell now, right? We're not going to start telling people. We're going to give them the opportunity to discover for themselves the actions on that action list. And Marnie does it in a beautiful way. So I'm going to give you a link to her course so that you can go view the whole thing. Marnie, I'm interested to hear when you shared this course with people in your company, how did they respond to it?
It was overwhelmingly amazing feedback. It's not something that my company had seen before. When I shared this specifically with the privacy officer that I was working with, he said, "Wow, I've never seen my topic be presented in such an exciting way before." I mean, I can imagine he works with privacy all day long. Another comment that I got was from the one of our growth curriculum. She's the growth curriculum director. She's based in Australia. And I'm just going to read these to you. She said, "I enjoyed how the story-driven approach brought the training to life. It made the content feel much more relatable and engaging, especially on a topic like privacy, which is always dry. The transition between the story and the solve and reflect questions was seamless, and I found that this method encouraged me to think critically about the concepts." And
Mm,
then the other comment that I got was from our learning technologies director. He's located in the UK. He said, "This is fantastic. I love the way you have structured it and how the flow is logical and immersive. The Vian story flow, which is the animation, is great and works well in understanding the moment and keeps you thinking rather than just answering. The story
mm.
piece really puts the content information out of read and click into a personal resonance and experience. There's also a level of emotional vesting, which is a great achievement. Well done, love this." So that was my feedback. It was
I love,
really nice to get.
yeah, I love that comment about it keeps you thinking. Why does it keep you thinking? Because the story doesn't tell you what to do.
Mhm.
It invites you to observe, critically think about it, and then you give them opportunities to solve problems based on the story. So our minds are working. They are working hard as so a story-based course um, may at first seem like, oh, a lighthearted, fun little thing, but no, it actually is very difficult when you are taking a story-based course because you have to really be thinking along the way and uncovering things and making observations, critically thinking about the story itself and how that story applies to your own work.
Yep.
Do any of you have any questions that you would like to ask Marnie about her project. Cassandra gives you congratulations.
I saw that. Thank you, Cassandra.
Anybody? So Connie says, I felt drawn in and to make my own decision about which video to use. So which surveillance video to use. Yeah. Awesome,
Sorry
Connie.
that it was a little bit late feedback. It just came to me.
No, that's
That
great.
was actually official Department of Transportation video from my area on a bridge project that's going on right now.
And the other part about that is like I didn't even think about like the license plate detail. Like, oh, you can see, oh, so it's like, yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. And so that, okay, Cassandra says, Marnie, how did you get buy-in from the compliance officer to be on board with instructional story design?
So I use this as an example. I did not get buy-in because it takes, I think it's one of those, you have to see it first to see how effective it is. And so now I took, this was from training that was created for last year's annual mandatory training. And now that they've seen this, they want to use something similar for this year's mandatory annual training. I don't know if it will be this exact one because this was a very specific example, but
Yeah.
but we're talking through the process right now. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, it's a you got to see it to believe it kind of thing, I think, for most people, especially if they're very black and white compliance type folks.
Yes. I think a lot of times with instructional designers who are unfamiliar with story design, you have to see it to believe it as well.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm so glad that all of you are on this call today to actually see some real examples of great compliance courses. And maybe you can share, if you're having problems convincing your compliance officer, you can share Marnie's example with them. And I will show you how to do that at the end of this call. Oh, thank you so much, Marnie.
You're welcome.
Very, very well done. And such a pleasure working with you to get this um, from scratch. I mean, from scratch, bottom to top.
Mhm.
A beautiful course. So thank you.
Thank you. And if can I put in a plug for you? If any of you are on the fence about going through the certification process, definitely invest in it. It really is an incredible learning experience, and for those of us who like learning, it really was invaluable.
The feeling is mutual. I just enjoy so much because I end up learning from every person who goes through the program. So thank you for the plug.
You're welcome. I'm good for that. You can pay me later. No, I'm just kidding.
Teresa, your course for certification is a course you created for your own portfolio. It's an interesting topic because it's actually for the people a lot of the people on this call. How did you get to know your learning audience for this story? Tell us a little bit about what this course is about.
Mhm. This is an interactive audio story for designers in general, but of course for instructional designers, and it has to do with how we handle perfectionism and our own expectations. And for this course, I of course read many articles, like places like Medium, where people share a lot of ideas, and I am part of a community of designers in general, graphic designers, motion designers, UX designers, and there I could, I did a survey to and ask people, and I was fortunate that some people answer the survey. And I also read a lot of Reddit. I went the rabbit hole and read a lot of what people share there, because I think Reddit is a good place where people share a lot of personal experience. They give you insights about something they are really going through, and you can see the answers, and I got inspiration from it. Yeah.
So doing your research by doing surveys, reading articles to learn more and more about who your learning audience is so that you have a really robust audience profile. I was really impressed by the research that you put into that. And then choosing a topic like how to overcome perfectionism, how to deal with perfectionism as an instructional designer was probably a little closer to home than what I want to admit. Because I can struggle with that. And so I learned a lot from your course as you were creating it. So as we watch Teresa's story, and it is an audio-driven story, but the closed captioning is on. If you need to turn that on in the Zoom call, there is a button there that says closed captioning. When you take this course, when you go through it after this session, you can actually open the transcript also for the audio files. But for right now, we're just going to listen to the story. It is in several parts, and I'm not going to go through the training that happens in between each of these stories, but I am going to just highlight the stories, right? So sit back, relax, enjoy this story. It's a very soothing kind of story, but there is definitely relatable characters and strong conflict. So ask yourself those same two questions. How do I feel when I'm watching this? And why do I think I feel that way? Let's show Teresa's. Here we go. These are the cast of characters: Soul, Alex, let's go to their story. So here's Soul, here's Alex. They're on a video call with two new clients, Tony and Amanda.
That's the goal. Saul, Alex, you both are the experts, so we're in good hands.
Saul and Alex are on a video call with Tony and Amanda, new clients from a middle-sized local company.
So, we're counting on you to make this project really stand out. We're thinking of something fresh, but we trust your judgment.
Sure, Tony. But just to clarify, what does something fresh mean to you?
Tony, we're on top of it. You'll love what we come up with.
Of course. We're sure you're going to surprise us with your magic.
Can you make sure the design feels modern, but with a vintage twist?
Got it. Yes, sure, Amanda.
Awesome. We need to move on to our next appointment, but we're looking forward to your offer.
Really, Saul?
Come on, Alex, what should I do? These are new important clients. I need to go. You know we can handle this.
Ugh.
And then she follows that piece of the story up with some questions. And we go advance to the next part of the story.
That afternoon after the call, Saul receives an email from Tony.
Hi, Saul. I didn't have time to tell in the call. We're short on budget, but can offer exposure. Could you send some drafts by the end of the week? Thanks. Tony. Aha. Exposure won't pay our bills, Tony. Okay. Hi, Tony. We are excited about the project and really want to make it work. Let's discuss possibilities when you have time.
Okay, then again, she follows up this little part of the story with some more questions where we reflect and we solve. Encourage you to go through this. And then we go over to Alex.
I'm wrapping up for today, Alex. You joining?
Just a few more tweaks here, but almost done. Enjoy your evening, Julia.
Okay, don't stay too late.
No worries. Just finishing these animations up. I need to send them today.
Alex switches to his browser to re-watch some animations his favorite designers showcase.
Gosh, they make it look so easy. Why can't I get this right?
Alex is on the train on his way home, scrolling through Instagram.
I'll never be as good as them.
The next morning, Alex is exhausted and reluctantly hits send on the email to the client.
Please, I hope they like it. I know I could have done better, but it's too late now.
Hey, there is one more piece of the story, but let's just stop there for a moment and get your take. How are you feeling right now? Why do you feel that way? What's your response to this story? Stressed. A stress that feels very at home, very close to home to me. Angie, anticipating lots of conflict between characters. Mhm. So we've got, the clients, there's some conflict there because now they're asking something that seems a little unreasonable. And then you've got the conflict between Alex and Soul, and then their own internal conflict, right? Perplexed and no specific communication, not sure they all truly understand each other. Good. Good, good, good.
I was just going to add, since I'm on camera and can just unmute, they're very relatable. Personally, I think for all of us as instructional designers, at some point we probably sit there and think to ourselves, I don't think I can do this, and just the same thoughts that Alex was having.
Yes, yes. And I think on both sides, Soul as well, like just wanting to get that client, especially if you're a freelance instructional designer, wanting to be able to meet a client's needs, but not, um, just sell yourself out. So I think one of the reasons why those characters are so relatable, as Marnie mentioned, is because of the research that she did and the extensive audience profile that she created about her learning audience, to make the characters in her story really sing, really hit home for us. Um, there's something else about this course that I found really remarkable, and that was the innovative use of Rise as the authoring tool. So, Teresa, could you give us some insights in how you maximize the tools within Rise to achieve such an immersive experience? Like, as I was watching those stories again, I just found myself like sinking into them, you know? So, how did you create that using a tool that is often quite transactional, Rise, to draw us in so much?
Mhm. I think a point is that at some point in the design process, I realized that I couldn't have a right and wrong answer or way of answering the questions. I want people to feel that there is no right and wrong, but that they are like being seen by the characters, and they can also like identify with them. So I then started to use the blogs for that. And I think if you know RISE, you know, if when you have a quiz, then you have this right and wrong, multiple choice or single choice question, and you get this bam, that's wrong or that's right, and that was not what I wanted to have. So I just tried to make it work with other blogs that are, yeah, sometimes used for something else. But for me, it was like a way to the answers or the options are just like one click away, and there is no right and wrong for that. And on the other hand, if you see the course, then you realize it follows a pattern. It's always like you have the video, the image, then you have the audio blog, and then you have like the question with the tabs interaction or with the cards interaction, and it just goes that way. So I think it is also important to define a pattern and follow a pattern, because that gives you flow and rhythm, and that is important for people. Like if they have a rhythm in something, then they know they kind of know what's coming, but they are not focusing on the usability of it because they already understand, but they are really then focusing on the content.
Yes.
So yeah, that is kind of the idea behind it.
Yeah, I love that. So when you go through this course, I'm going to give you a link to both of their courses. When you go through it, pay attention to what's written on the buttons, because she maximizes every inch of the real estate in Rise. So each of the buttons is not just click here to go next, but it's a question, or it makes us anticipate what's coming. She also creatively uses different interactions within Rise to serve purposes that they weren't created for. So I love that aspect of this course. And some of the feedback that you got from people who took that course, Teresa, were that they ended up exploring more options than they would have had it been just a right or wrong answer. Isn't that correct?
Yes, yes. I tested the prototype with designers as well. And it was very interesting because I have to say, like the instructional designers I tested the course with, they were like, there is no right or wrong answer here. I'm not sure that is right, And the other designers, the general motion UX designers and everything, they were like, I felt safe. I felt in a safe space. And as soon as I understood that there is no right and wrong, then I just wanted to explore all the possibilities. And that was very interesting for me, because I think sometimes we are very biased in our thinking, and as instructional designers, and we are kind of limiting ourselves as well. So I think the important thing is always like test your prototype and just be open for feedback, and there's no right or wrong. There are just possibilities.
I'm super glad that you expanded your pilot audience to more than just instructional designers, but you open it up to other types of designers as well. That's really great. The and that it was those designers that gave you that feedback, like, oh, this is great. I get to explore all over the place. But somehow the instructional designer was actually coming into the experience expecting some sort of very hard right or wrong. Um, so that's really some interesting insights into who we are and how we can grow as instructional designers. Um, Stacy asks, do any of you have experience creating stories in Captivate? I'm not fond of Captivate, but it is all our organization is willing to pay for. So, do either of you work in Captivate, Teresa or Marnie?
I have in the past, and I think it comes down to I don't think it matters what tool you use, because the stories as long as you have it mapped out in such a way you can put it into any tool, even PowerPoint. I think it just depends on the story. The story kind of dictates. Oh my gosh, I can't say that right. It dictates the design.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter the tool that you put it into. You can even use stories in live training and, tell the story about, Mark and Ingrid in a live setting and then stop and ask the questions to solve and reflect and so on. So it doesn't have to be necessarily articulate storyline or rise.
Yes, I would second that. In fact, a lot of people who come through the certification program end up creating their stories in very unique and wonderful ways. Like you saw audio today with pictures, you saw animated video. We have some people who use text with pictures. Even the production of the story itself, it doesn't really matter as long as the design of the story is done well. It's a bonus when it looks so beautiful, like Marnie and Teresa have shown us. It can be made very beautiful and very cohesive. And when you go through both of their courses, you will see just how conscious they have been about color choices and things like that. And those are inspirational to us as we design our own courses. But truly, if you have designed something well, then the production or the development of the course itself really is secondary where you choose to put that course. Great advice. I want to give you a link in the chat so that you can go and visit Marnie and Teresa's projects. So I have put that in the chat. Stacy, I am so glad you feel inspired. And Cassandra, yes, kudos to Teresa for the creative way of using Rise. Excellent. So when you go to that page, you can scroll down and you can see example projects of graduates from the Instructional Story Design program. I'd like to show you also, I'm going to share my screen with you again, that in this course, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong browser. In this course, there are some other things for you to explore. First of all, when you go to chapter 2, where you came to join this event, this button will turn into a watch the recording button, and there will be a little passcode underneath the button. Copy, click the button, paste the passcode into Zoom, and you can watch this again. In the chapter 3, take it to the next level. If any of you are interested in certification to become an instructional story designer, there are 2 steps to that process. The first one is this instructional story design experience, which is a 6-week cohort with other instructional designers. It is awesome and fun. Step 2 is the one-on-one mentorship that both Marnie and Teresa have mentioned. And we build your story-based course from the ground up. And that can take anywhere from 3 months, even up to a year. Or if your project gets waylaid like Marnie's, it can take even a little bit longer.
Might even take a little bit longer. Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it, is that it's very flexible and works with your schedule. And if at work your project suddenly gets deprioritized, it's okay. We will roll with it. And if any of you use Beyond or haven't but want to, there are 3 steps to certification with the Beyond certification program, and it also ends with a one-on-one mentorship with me. The next activity is connect with me on LinkedIn. And I gave you connections to Teresa and Marnie in the email that I sent this morning. And then if you have suggestions about what you'd like to talk about during future roundtables, the next one is going to be in August, and you can register for that. I will put a link to that as well if you want to go ahead and pre-register. We have a lot more free events this year than we ever have. So I'm pasting the link to those free events, including the August roundtable. Okay, so we have some time for other questions, and Connie has one. Did you create these courses all by yourself, or did you collaborate with colleagues? Teresa, do you want
All
to
by
start?
myself.
What'd you say, Marty?
I said I did it by myself. So what I did initially, and you'll see it when you go to this course, is I took a couple of pieces from the mandatory training that I created initially for last year, brought it in, and then added the story to it. So you will see some click and read kind of stuff to prep you to get you ready for the story. But yeah, it was all me.
Yeah, and I like that stuff at the beginning because sometimes a course needs some context before you get into the story, but many times, the story right at the top, like we saw in Teresa's, is really the way that I recommend that you get that story as close to the beginning of the training as you possibly can. Teresa, what
And
about
I
you?
think, yeah, it's the same for me. It's because it is a personal project, it's a portfolio project. I created by my own, but I think it's very important if you have peers and you have like your inner circle and you have people who you can ask for feedback. And
Oh yeah.
during the process, that is also like, it is, I wouldn't say I did it on my own because I had people helping me besides friends, of course, you know, but just like going and asking, how do you find the color palette, or how do you find the story? And people are giving you feedback and insights and really valuable ideas to develop. So in that case, it was not just myself.
I'll have to amend mine. Yes, I do have a lot of my work besties that helped quite a
Yes,
bit
yes, that is very
with the
important, I
feedback
think.
portion.
Yeah.
Right, right. But you aren't farming out the
No.
development of it at all. You developed it all yourselves. Good. Um, so Connie has another question. How long did it take you both from beginning to end?
The certification process for me was about a year and a half, but that wasn't all working on this for a year and a half. I honestly did not track the time to, the actual work itself was, a good investment of time, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was months and months and months. I had a lot of stops and starts just because of things going on at my company. So, but getting down to it, I can't even give you an estimate, but it was work. It was definitely a lot of work, and it depends on how much you want to put into it as well, because you can keep your project relatively simple as well. It doesn't have to be a full on, animation or anything like that.
That's right. And really one of the things that we were talking about collaboration, one of the wonderful things about mentorship is just the synergy that I got to have with Marnie and I got to have with Teresa and the excitement that I had about their work. I hope that sometimes spurred them on to keep going.
We needed it. I know I needed it.
Yes, for me, it was like, I think I started in April and I finished in October. So it was way shorter than Marnie's, but I really valued the fact that I had accountability with you. It was very
It's
helpful.
huge. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. And yeah, and so Teresa and Marty like set their own schedules, and then I just check in with them. And throughout the process, we had these one-on-ones. Every time they finished one stage of the process, we would get together. Or in Marty's case, oops, my project has to change. We get together and we talk about it. Stacy asks, I work in a company that has over 1,000 employees. Most of them are healthcare workers. How would you suggest obtaining feedback for relatable characters from such a large group? Like, yeah, so how do you create that audience profile of such a large group of people?
Yeah, go ahead, Teresa. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Well, thanks. In my case, I also kind of work like this at work. I work for an organization, and I have the project team, like I'm just like, I have the SMEs. And what I do is also like with the SMEs, try to survey people. I don't know if I have 3 SMEs in the project, like each of them is going to try to survey, I don't know, like 3 people. And then we have like 9 answers. And from that, I mean, if it is a big organization, it's pretty much the same like you, Stacy, then you're just trying like to approach something, right? Like, and that's for me, that is enough. That gives me an idea, and I just work on that because it's a lot of people, and you can work with that much. But at least that is something I feel comfortable doing, because we are even that we are going like we are working from real life and not just like inventing something.
Yeah. So my company is about 36,000 people worldwide, and so there's no way that I could survey people. But what I did, just like Teresa said, I started with the SMEs and said, tell me who your audience is. Who is the audience? Now, in this case, it's everybody in the company. So how did I choose? I just went. I started by kind of categorizing the different people who might be listening to this training in kind of some really, really, really broad categories, and then eventually got down to the point where I was thinking, well, I've got someone who's working on data, and I've got someone who's working at a project. And then from there, develop the characters and the characteristics. And it's mostly based on people that I know. I've been with my company for about 10 years. And so I know a lot of the ins and outs and the quirks and all that kind of stuff. If I didn't, I would have just kept asking questions of the SMEs and then ask them who else I could ask if it was very specific to a certain type of audience. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I'm just in the habit of asking lots and lots of questions.
But even a small amount of people can validate like the assumptions that you or your SMEs are doing. So if you are able to do it, I will always like go that way. And even if you have just like 3 people, 3 employees or something, always better than just building on your own assumptions.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful tips for how to get to know your learning audience, especially larger audiences. I had to do the same thing, and I took a very similar approach as Marnie described. And sometimes I would, like, if I was going to be um, doing board training, how do you get to talk to board members? Well, you don't, but you can talk to legal, and you can actually, these board members were, fairly famous in their lines of work. So I Googled them and I found out little things about them, where they went to school. Some of them had written books. Some of them had some quirky interests, and some of those things made their way into the story that I created for the board, for board training. Yes, story-based board training, believe it or not. Well, Marnie and Teresa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been marvelous talking with both of you, and it's been marvelous having you go through the program. I'm so excited about your futures, creating more story-based courses. And so maybe next year at this time, we're going to have like another round of what else have you produced? So thank you for joining us today, Marnie and Teresa. If any of you are interested in instructional story design, I put a link in the chat just now. There is a movie, a 30-minute movie that I produced called The Mysterious Disappearance of Story, that gives you a very good foundation for where to start. And if you are interested in investing in your own instructional design expertise, I hope to see you at the school again. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.